What's up, everyone? Welcome back to 30 to Life. It's your boy Uso Ron, and today we putting in a little more work on these videos because I want to get out some stories for you guys. I know how much you guys like my little stories about my childhood, so here go one for y'all, man. When I was 12 years old, I was getting in a lot of trouble. Y'all know what time it is. Y'all know, as from my past videos, I was explaining to you about my childhood, how rough it was as a kid, and I was acting up a lot. So I would get it suspended from school, just damn near every month. And eventually they locked me up for it. And I went to juvenile hall for the first time at 12 years old. The school district ended up kicking me out of the whole school district. So I was supposed to start like community school, going over there with the kids on probation. But my parents decided that maybe it would be a better idea to send me to Hawaii to go to school out there. And maybe that my aunts and my uncles and them could probably, put me in check. So I go out to Hawaii at 12 years old, and I end up staying with my aunt in Aliamanu on Salt Lake Boulevard. It was right next to Aloha Stadium. And so I ended up going to school at Aliamanu Intermediate. And my first week in school there, couldn't stay out of trouble. I ended up with another girl named Loimata. Me and her ended up seeing this other girl who pulled her wallet out, and she had a lot of money at lunchtime. So, like some dummies, we decided to go in her bag and steal it. And we threw her wallet and her bag, up on the roof and shit. We just kind of got rid of her shit. Well, we thought nothing of it. Me and her split the money. And the next day when I came to school, I get called out of class and I go to the office, and Honolulu PD is there. So, they arrest me. They take me down to the police station, and my auntie and them have to come get me. So I think that was a big embarrassment for my aunt. And, I started getting treated real bad after that. But, the way I was living in Hawaii wasn't really good, from what, in my opinion, for a child. I was getting smacked around. I remember, at times my mom and them would send me gifts for Christmas, and, my aunt would just take it and give it to her kids. When I was out there, I got a Nintendo for Christmas, and it was given to her son. It wasn't for me. So, and then another time, my sisters, they'd do chores around the house and mow the lawn and shit like that. And, they get maybe like $5 from my dad, and they would write me a letter and send it to me. My aunt would open up that letter and make sure she took the money out before I get the letter. So, I was just did pretty bad out there by her. And I just remember, one day I had enough. I was actually living under the house. They had put a bed under the house. The house was on stilts. If you know Salt Lake, they had a lot of flooding and shit. So they had stairs that went all the way up, and the house was on stilts. So under the house, I lived under there. I slept on a mattress, a dirty ass mattress with all the cockroaches and shit like that, and all the geckos. I lived under there, and one day, I don't know what she was tripping on. I don't know what I did. But she had came down there and started whooping on me, smacking me around and shit like that, pulling my hair. And I remember just something inside me snapped. And I was like, fuck this. And I stood up, and I remember towering over her because at that time, I think I was around 13 by now. But I was a tall 13-year-old kid. And I remember just towering over her and looking down at her. And I told her straight up, I said, don't you ever touch me again, and she saw that I meant it. And I remember just pushing past her, and I walked out, and my uncle was out there. He knew what time it was. He knew she was in there whooping my ass. He never really said nothing, but, he tried to sit me down and give me a little speech before I left. But I remember in my head, I had it made up. I had my mind made up. I said, man, fuck this. I'm not ever coming back to this place, And I left, and I ended up becoming homeless at 13 years old. Until I was about 15. So for about 2 years, maybe almost a little over 2 years, I was homeless in Hawaii. And during those 2 years, I went through a lot of shit. I guess if you want to be homeless, though, anywhere, Hawaii is a good place because it had good weather. I was able to get my clothes and my shoes by stealing it from people's houses, because a lot of people hang their clothes outside, versus they don't have no dryers and shit like that. So they hang their clothes on clotheslines. So I go steal some clothes from the people's clotheslines. I steal people's shoes from their porches. You know what I'm saying? And I remember even getting called out on it because somebody has seen me wearing they shit. But yeah, so I did shit like that. I would go down to the swap meet over at Aloha Stadium, and I would steal clothes from there so that I can have something nicer to wear. And a lot of times I would have to steal food, I'd steal food wherever I can, and sometimes people were nice enough to give me food. But I remember in particular when I was at Alimanu Park, I had stole a car cover from someone's car, and I used that as a blanket, and I would sleep on the bench over there at the park. But believe it or not, there was actually like 4 or 5 other kids that ended up in that park with me who were homeless. One of the guys was Brian Kanoa, rest in peace. He's a Hawaiian guy who was left there as a kid because his parents moved away from the island and they left him. So, me and him were always there. He was a little older than me, so I kind of looked up to him as a big brother, as a protector. He was always down to fight, you know what I mean? And he had my back. There's even a couple girls who were homeless that lived there with us too as well. Yeah, believe it or not, a lot of kids in Hawaii, they go through a lot of abuse. And so, they end up in situations like that. But I remember the police used to be really cool about it too, because like I said, we were kids, but the police had came there one day and told us, the people in the area are calling us and telling us you guys are living in this park. And so they basically told us, they didn't tell us to leave. They told us to go deeper into the park, out more into the back, so that people could see us and to sleep over there. And so, I guess for the most part, people felt bad for us, and there's this little gas station that was across the street from the park. And I would always go into that gas station every morning because I was hungry, and I'd steal a little candy bar or maybe a bag of chips or something and walk out and go back to the park and eat it. But I remember the clerk, he was always looking at me because, of course, he's not stupid. He knows that I'm coming in there every day and I don't got no money, but I'm leaving there and, and going right across the street back to the park. So, again, like I said, some people, man, they just were cool. Maybe just were willing to turn a blind eye to it because they felt bad for me. I was 13 years old. And so I would do that to eat. Still to live, and eventually the crimes that I was committing got worse. I started breaking into homes. I would go to the military bases, and that's where it was a no-no. But I would go to the military bases because they have money, and I'd break into their homes, and I would steal money, steal whatever food. I'd sit down and make a sandwich up in someone's house. I'd get comfortable. But that's what I was doing for a while until eventually I got caught and ended up in DH. DH is short for Detention Home. It's like their juvenile hall out there in Hawaii. But if you know anything about Hawaii, man, the local kids, man, they're rough. They are rough. They love to fight. And so being in DH was like being in CYA in California. These kids in there, they did not like me because of the fact that I was from the mainland, and I didn't speak pidgin very well. So they were on me right away. They knew that I wasn't from Hawaii. And so I got picked on in there, and I handled my business. I remember one time this kid walked up to me, and he told me, "Hey, bro, I like your shoes, bro." And I thought, me being a dummy, thinking he was saying he liked them, I said, "Thank you," and he kind of just like looked at me crazy. He said, "Nah, bro, I like your shoes, bro." And he basically was telling me like he wants them, and so I had to get down with this fucking crazy ass kid, fight him. But good thing is that some other people, they, the other kids, they were like, "Man, leave him alone." You know what I mean? They had told him to leave me alone and shit, let me have my shoes and shit like that. But I was always scared to go to sleep in that place, man. I'm talking about, man, people was getting beat down. But, I was stuck in there because my aunties and them, like I said, I was homeless. No one knew I was there for a long time. And if they did know, they weren't coming to pick me up. So when I go to my little court hearings, my little hearings, there was no one there to pick me up. And so they just can't release me to the streets. I'm a juvenile. And I remember just this one time, man, I was going to another hearing, and I was just like praying, man, begging God, man, I wanted to be out of this place. And I was thinking, man, no one's going to show up again. No one's going to show up, But my cousin did. My cousin showed up, and, he knew me because he had lived with us in California with my mom, and so he can go to college. So I don't know why he showed up, but he did. And he got me out of there. But, I guess he didn't want to deal with me either, because when we got in his car to leave, he asked me, where do you want to go? Where do you want to be dropped off at? So I had nowhere else to go but Alimanu Park. And so I told him Alimanu Park. And he dropped me off there. Time went on, and I was just always getting in a lot of trouble and shit. I was stealing cars. And I remember this one time, it happened to be actually kind of cold. I was just walking around the streets, and I just didn't have nowhere to go. I was kind of far from the park. No buses were running. And so I had broke into this car, and I thought, man, I'm just going to sleep in this car until the morning. I'm going to get up out of here. And I remember I was just sleeping, and I woke up to someone like standing next to the car, and it was a white lady, and she was standing there crying, and she had her 2 kids with her and stuff like that. And I opened the door to run, and she said, no, don't run. She said, what are you doing in my car? And I told her, I'm sorry, I just didn't have nowhere to sleep. And so I was going to leave, in the morning. I'm sorry, for being in your car. But this lady was real nice, and she had took me up to her apartment. She fed me, and she told me to stay there, and she was going to go to work. And she took off, and wherever she went, whatever. But she literally left me in her apartment to stay there. I ended up staying with this lady for a couple months, but again, just another time that people were nice. She ended up, finding a boyfriend and moving out from there. So I was back on the streets. But so I got in a lot of trouble in Hawaii, and I can't say it was always bad and that people always treated me bad, like that time with that lady, but she was very nice. Another time I was walking like next to the airport, around Nimitz Highway, by the airport kind of. And I was just walking, just like I'm normally doing, just being on the streets. And I remember my aunt, one of my aunts, I remember 2 of my aunts pulling up on me, and, they were crying, and they felt bad for me being on the streets. And I remember trying to run from them, because I didn't want to talk to them, but they kind of like chased me down, and they just told me they want to give me some money and told me to come live with them and stuff like that. But, yeah, man, I mean, so it wasn't always like, really, really bad with my family. There were some family members that were good to me. But, being homeless in Hawaii really took a big toll on me. I mean, I can just go on and on about my story out there. But anyways, so one of the things that I would do while I was homeless, and I was staying in that park, is I would ride this bus that had the bus route in the area of the park. And I'd ride this bus until its last stop, until the bus stops running. It was probably around 9:30, 9:40. I can't remember, around close to 10, the bus would stop running. But I'd ride this bus until then, just to be out of the street for a little while before I go into the park and go to sleep. So this bus driver, he kind of got accustomed to me being on his bus, but I never talked to him or nothing like that. But I'd be the last one on his bus, and I would always get off at that stop by the park. And so one day I'm riding on the bus with him, and we're riding past Pearl Ridge. Pearl Ridge is a mall over there in Hawaii, and they got these little stores next to that mall. And he stopped in that area, and it's just me and him on the bus. He's driving and just me on the bus, and it was late, and it was about to be, his last little round, his last stops coming up. And before he hops out, he tells me, "Hey, bro, watch the bus. Don't let nobody take my bus." Like kind of like a joke. And he hops off and he runs into the store. And when he comes out, he's got a loaf of bread and he's got this pack of bologna. And he walks up to me and he gives it to me. And he goes, "Here," And I remember just like feeling like, blessed. I just felt like somebody cared, And I remember just crying, just sitting there holding this bread and this bologna, and it just was nice that he recognized. I never told him I was homeless or anything like that. But he drops me off at where I always get off, and I had something to eat that night. And, that was really nice of him. So the reason why I'm telling you about this guy is because one day I'm riding on the bus and we're riding past Ali Manu Park. And I always look in the park because I know people that are there, And this particular day, as we're riding past the park, I look over out there and I see this woman walking through the park. And I go, "Mom?" And I swear it looks just like my mom from behind, her hair, everything. And I said, "Man, that's my mom." So I yell up to the bus driver. I said, hey, stop the bus. Because he was already passing the park. No one was there to pick up. And so he had to like literally stop, away from the bus stop. But I was like, stop the bus. And he's like, "Hey, bro, what's wrong?" And I tell him, "I think I see my mom in the park." And he smiles at me and he opens the doors and he says, "You better go." And I hop out the bus. I run into the park, and I remember just running. My mom had got, all the way across the park, and she was talking to Brian, and then Brian Kanoa and a couple of the people that were homeless there. She's asking them, "Have you seen my son, Ron," or whatever, But I'm running up behind her, and as I'm running by, I yell out, "Mom," And I was so happy to see her. And I remember just hugging her. And I wanted to go home. She said, "Son, I'm out here because your aunties and them called me because you have a court date to go to. The police are looking for you." And I said, "I know, Mom. I've been hiding for a long time." And she says, "You got to go to court, and I'm going to go there with you." She said that was basically the whole reason why she flew out there. And so we go to court the next day, and the judge tells me very sternly, he says, "You are just a visitor on this island." At that time, I had like 4 or 5 bench warrants out for me for different kinds of things. And he says, "I'm going to dismiss these bench warrants, but you are to leave this island and not come back." He told me, "Your mom has come out here to come get you, and I want you to get on the plane and go home with your mother." So that was what was happening. My mom ended up having to actually go back before me because she was on a round trip ticket, but I was going home like 2 days after her. But yeah, so within 2 days, I was getting on a plane, and I remember no one really came from my family. There's just a couple aunts and a couple cousins. But I remember as I was saying bye, how cold they were towards me. And I remember when I was walking away, I heard "good riddance," And I got on the plane and I went home, back to the mainland, back to California. And that was a whole nother trip, y'all know. But we'll talk about it more. I hope y'all enjoyed this story though. And as I always say, man, I'm here for y'all, man, and I love y'all, man. And y'all know what time it is. Ooh, so